All right, everyone, it's time to go through the last community updates and see how OPR is doing, see some of the things how it's changed, what's going on. Many of you know I do these things regularly. I've worked in analytics before in the past, so with my job, so I am always sort of a fact hound going through this stuff here. So let's just look at the community survey update, the survey results. So big thing to note, I think, is 2,400 responses. Now that is the largest increase we've seen. So going back, so if we look at January 2024, around 1,200. Then you had July 2024 was 1,400. So up by around 200. That's how it's traditionally been with OPR. You jump up around 200 responses. Um, this one is 2,400. So I do see with the OPR. Now, let's be sort of careful about, you know, we always have to be careful about trying to judge the actual success of, like, in other words, I don't know that we can take a one-to-one correlation that there are, basically 50% more OPR players. But I think that we can say that this has been a pretty breakout year for OPR to get 800 more. It does represent some broad sense that OPR has grown a lot more this time than it has where it's been more incremental, which has been good here. So I think that's a great thing to see. This is basically a 50% increase in responses that I think can roughly correlate to OPR's growth and success. So now, why have they continued to grow and succeed? Well, that we'll save that for another discussion, right? You know, we'll just save that for now. I would say it's a very good thing that we're seeing. Big deal. All right, we can say as well for this survey that this survey the latest survey they released has really changed as far as the content goes. So one of the things that they've sort of, I guess, retired this question is, where do you follow OPR content? And honestly, I think it's fine to retire this question. Um, I think that when you're doing surveys, you really want to dig at specific things. And I didn't really feel that this was really like providing a, hey, everyone, they're going to the OPR website and the Patreon, and I'm okay with them doing it. All right, the next one let's get into. So one thing I would say is that let's just, for simplicity's sake, say that OPR has grown, I don't know, roughly 50% ish in the last 6 months. I know that's very simplistic, but just to sort of stretch it down, where are a lot of these new players coming from? Which I do think represented, right? We do have, I would say, a significant number of players who are coming into OPR who weren't here 6 months ago, who are now here. And what I think that we can use the data for is to sort of broadly, that's what I want to do in this when I talk about this analysis of the survey. I want to broadly gauge like, who are these new people coming in to OPR. And what we can do that is we can generally look at these results, and we can say, okay, where do we see the 800 extra people, in each of these questions? So that's what I'm going to try to do. Let's be again clear. This isn't this is more thinking about it just as the 800 as the significant number of new people coming in. So, all right, first they ask is, which OPR games do you play? And a big jump is in Grimdark Future. So if we look around 1,100 to almost 1,700, that's like around 600, about maybe, I would say 600 people, saying that like roughly 75% of these new players are coming from science fiction. They're playing the science fiction games Grimdark Future, and we could argue that's 40K. So I would say like a significant number of these players coming into OPR are playing not even the firefight. as you can kind of see, Firefight as a percent went down, as a percentage went less. Um, it's the full version, Grimdark Future. People are coming into Firefight, but they're not playing it as much. So Grimdark Future, we would say these people coming in, either they were former Games Workshop 40K players, or they're just coming in just purely interested in Grimdark Future. So that's one thing to note. Um, there's sort of increases across the board. I think the big notable increases is in Age of Fantasy. We see that like StarQuest has had a very small incremental update. So in other words, people are playing StarQuest and they're playing where's the other one? The quests. So you see the quests seem to just be, with all these additionally new people coming on, they're not coming for StarQuest and for Quest. Those games seem to just be more for an established group. You can say around 400, right? There's sort of a small, stable group playing these two games. Not a bad thing. Warfleets, same thing. I think it's been a little bit of a jump, but mainly that seemed to be a small factor in this. Now, we do see that is roughly 300 people, so about, again, 50% of, I mean, 40% of these new players are coming in to play Age of Fantasy. Skirmish, same thing, a smaller percentage drop. Regiments seems to have gotten a little bit of traction. I mean, that's a decent bump. I mean, 238 to 363 is, I mean, if you, from a percentage perspective, that's like a 50% bump, right? 238 is basically at 150. That's 50% more Age of Fantasy Regiments players. Of course, it's a small percentage overall, but it does show there's some growth. Age of Fantasy Regiments. All right, how often do you play? So, what have we gathered from this first question? The first thing that we've gathered here is that we have a large number of people coming into this play OPR. The second thing we would say of this question is that a large number of those people are coming in and they want to play Grimdark Future, and they want to play Age of Fantasy as a smaller percent. And all the other games they're sort of interested in, you know. And then you have sort of the specialist side of OPR, Warfleets, Firefight, Quest, and StarQuest, which these new players aren't playing that. Now that could change. Now that's one thing to note is, are these StarQuests, is this sort of a game that people are going to start with the big games and continue? That's something we'd want to look at. Are all these new players coming in for Grimdark Future and Age of Fantasy, are they going to sort of migrate to, to the specialist games? And I guess we'll see. All right. How often do you play? So who are these new players? Are they people who are kind of people who will want to play a lot, or are they just sort of coming in? What we tend to see is, one thing to note here is a significant, I would say, decrease from 15% to 13% into the 1 to 2 times a week players. So these new players coming in, they aren't the weekly players. They do play though, but you see the in other words, they are playing the game. They seem to be more playing the game around the 1 to 2 times a month, which got a slight. Again, I'm not going to get into statistics here, but basically a larger percent when it goes up is always a better inclination. I won't get into this. Let's just say that they are filling in a pocket of around the 1 to 2 times a month. Not bad. I mean, I think that the 3 times a month stayed just about the same. 3 times every few months, just about the same. What we would say is that these players, like, as a whole, aren't playing as dedicatedly as the 1 to 2 times a weekers. And that's not bad, but they're still, like I said, if we would roughly put them, these new players are playing roughly around maybe about 1 to 3 times a month. They're not weekly. They're like, but they're in that range, right? They're playing maybe twice. They're playing like once every 2 weeks, if we're sort of very simply boiling that down. That's not bad. Like that. So these players, they are playing the game. They're not sort of playing it on a weekly basis. So what could we infer to that? Are these players also sort of playing other games? Maybe. Let's go back to it. So, well, okay, where are these players playing the games? Now, this is a question that I followed a lot. Let's look at it. So, one thing we see that last time 1,308 players played at their home, almost 1,900 players. So that's again just about that's 600, and of the 800 extra, we would say about 75% of these new players coming in. Again, we're being very rough and being approximates. They're playing at their house. So it's still that's still who we're drawing in. But I do think it's noted that we have had a significant bump in games clubs and game stores. So game stores went up pretty good. That's 200. So 25% of these new players are playing in stores, and we have almost a doubling of the people playing in games clubs. Now I think a games club means more Europeans, so are these people? But that's significant. I mean, to basically get that double the amount of players are playing now in games clubs. That this seems to be that's a good thing, I think. Now it went up everywhere, but we have to look at the big percentage jumps. Conventions, I mean, did double. It's a small percent, but still, that showed a lot of traction. I think that we have seen OPR move, and as OPR themselves mentioned, the Rangers program have been working to bring OPR outside of just the homes into the communities, and I think they're right. I think the Rangers have been a success. Online has had a pretty good jump. You know, that's 50%. If I'm eyeballing, that's 50% jump, and that's a small percent, and so we can't judge the percentage increases from such a small thing. But again, who are these players? The majority of them are players who don't play as often, are playing Grimdark Future, generally playing at their homes, but also a significant number are playing in games clubs. So what we're doing here is we're putting together, if you will, a profile of these new players. Yeah. All right. So the next thing let's look at is their interest. They bring about. This is always an interesting question. What are these new players interested in doing? Well, 1,300 last time were interested in local casual game events. Well, we go up to, again, it's that same 600, right? It's, again, just over 600. But now we're starting to see, here is where we do the little data analysis. The same players, the same 600 is found in another place, right? They want to do casual stuff. The painting and hobbyists have as much, actually. So these players coming in, they're not quite interested in like coming to do hobby and paint events. But they want to play the game. So, they want to play it casually, but they want to play this game, which I think is good. We did see a significant bump in local competitive. So if we're looking, that's around 340%. So local competitive actually went up as a percentage, and it went up to, like I said, that 40%. The OPR community of players is about 40% people who want to play in tournaments, and I think that's a significant minority. When we talk about balance, when we talk about these sort of ideas and playing the game at a high level, people are very interested in that. It's not the majority, but 40% is a very strong minority. All right. So what else they talk about? They talk about conventions. Again, these players coming in, they're not as interested. Some of them, but they're not quite as interested in playing at local conventions, which would make sense. They play at home. It seems like these players really want to be connected to a local game shop, a local community. But it's there. It's up. Local tournaments is also up. I mean, everything is up. So still, overall pretty good. So let's continue to go over here now. There's been a big change here. One, and I think this the OPR team was sort of taking the last few questions about physical miniatures. I think they've dropped these questions because they are basically producing physical miniatures, so it's sort of like no reason to continue to ask it. That's fine. I think that's time will tell on the OPR physical miniatures. I don't really know. We'll have to see when the data comes out about how, you know, is OPR physical miniatures in box sets, is that something that's been successful? We can't quite say yet. They began with a new series of questions. So what I'm going to do here is on the previous survey, this one, I'm just going to skip down to where they began talking about armies, because all these next questions here I think are very important. I like that they put these questions in, but they don't have we don't have any sort of baseline. I guess we would say this is going to be the baseline now for like future questions, I hope. All right, so they begin asking a question um, about how much do you customize your armies? So one of the things that jumped out to me, now I think when I answer this question, I'm this guy. I'm a no, I don't use custom names or lore. I may put custom lore, but we'll get into that. So one, I'd say this: I never named my heroes, and to me it's very surprising that half of the OPR are people here who named their heroes. Now that's a pretty creative thing to do. It's something that I've never done, and the fact that we basically got 50%. So the OPR audience and subscribers are very into they're into the role-playing aspect of this game. They give their squads names to their regiments. That's still like, I mean, that's 30. They're over a third. They name their armies. Now, I think that I would say I name my army. I mean, I would say I use my army is always 40k lore. So does that? I don't know if that counts as a custom army. I would say it this way: I don't use the OPR lore, which we'll get into in a little bit. But that's interesting. They name their army. They create a custom background and lore. So a very highly creative thing. And basically, one third of us, and I'd say us, I'm generally a person who I love lore, but I don't like name my army in that. So still a healthy minority. It does show that the OPR audience is very, very creative. All right, painting your models. This is going to tell us a lot about the OPR audience. And what did they say? They tried to paint their models to match the official artwork. Now, if OPR means they mean the OPR lore, then not a lot of people are interested in following the OPR lores when they do their paint schemes. They seem to want to create their own color scheme. Now, I wish they had a second question regarding, like, maybe Games Workshop, if you will. In other words, I'd actually love to see which of these players are following Games Workshop canon for their custom colors, or are they following literally their own thing? But still, I think that's something that if we are judging this as an official OPR lore, not a lot of people are they may be reading the lore, but no one is willing to commit. 25% is willing to actually paint their army for OPR lore. A lot of people are using their own color schemes. And then a very small percent are painting unpainted models. That's the most important takeaway we can take from this graph is the players, the OPR audience, including the new players, they are mature gamers. They are people who aren't just coming in and they don't know how to paint. These people, remember, these players, the OPR audience, are mature gamers. They are painting their heroes, naming stuff, coming up with their own color schemes, and painting those. They are committed to the hobby, and that generally would say that the OPR audience is full of mature gamers. Not a bad thing. I would say the OPR isn't reaching out to brand new players. A person coming into OPR, from what we're gathering from these things, even if they're a new player, they are a new player who've sort of fully embraced every part of the hobby. These are mature gamers. All right. Even more so, which another thing that surprised me was they kit bash. Now I don't kit bash. I probably in again. I'm in the 1/3 of the people. I paint and I like painting, but I don't kit bash. So I was really surprised to see almost 50% kit bash. But look at this, over 50% of people, the OPR audience they print custom bits and they customize their models. Now, I wonder if that's an opportunity for OPR to start basically offering weapon upgrades. I don't know anything about that, but that's something. Is that an opportunity for OPR to start creating some weapon upgrades and maybe give a little more support to kit bashing? I don't know. But 3D kit bashing, basically. Wow. They custom sculpt and scratch build bits. Now that's crazy. That 18. So you're really getting OPR is very much the people who want to play 40K. They're an experienced gamers. They've got their 3D printer, but they're also going the next step in kit bashing. So these are very advanced audience. Another thing that's very fascinating to me, and this is something I use Army Forge a lot, is do they use it to create custom units armies? So what do we have here? It's actually, I was surprised it's this high. Basically, 50% of people use the Army Forge Studio. The largest thing, they create custom units, and I've seen a lot of people actually in my own local community do this. Well, they'll play an official list, but they'll actually go and custom build 1 or 2 units to their liking. So they do a half thing. They have their own. This is where I fall in. 20, almost 25% of people have created their own army book and faction. That's pretty impressive there. The other thing is that they've used Army Forge Studio to adapt models from another game to play into OPR. So that's another thing. Over one-fourth of people do this. So maybe they're playing bolt action. I mean, I think that maybe they're playing 40K or one of the fantasy games, and they don't see an official army, so they create their own. Maybe they're playing Heresy. Maybe we're getting some Heresy people in here, since we know of all that debacle. But, 50% of people don't do it. I still think that's very impressive, to see that. All right, let's get into what miniatures do you use to play. I don't think that's actually, where is that interesting? We have to find this one here. What miniatures do you use to play? So this is fascinating here. All right, so one, we see that, again, around 600 players, if we look at the two things, 1,100 to 17, it's about a 600 increase. These are people, we're getting, OPR seems to be playing to its strength. It's getting more of the 3D miniatures people who are basically printing their own models. All the other updates are staying about the same. Let's go into other 3D printed. That's, again, a significant. So if we look at 850 to 1416, pretty close to that 600, about 550-ish of other printed. So what about Warhammer miniatures? All right, 950 to 1540. So that's just over 600. We're getting a significant number of people. 600 of these 800, 75% of the growth, are coming from Warhammer. So we see a big growth in that area. Other physical miniatures, about 500. So we see growth in, one, we see OPR self-printed, people who have their own 3D printers, big growth. The other big growth area is in Warhammer miniature. So we're getting these two different groups, and they could, by the way, these groups could buy, they could be the same person, but it does show you broadly we're getting 3D printers, but we're also getting still a significant number of the growth. It's coming from Warhammer players, GW people who maybe are, let's just say, tired of those games. All right, so let's get back into the army list questions. We'll put that down. All right, do you use any of the advanced rules? Yes, about 56%. No, but they've purchased them, which I don't know. I mean, yeah, you have a Patreon. I don't know if that matters. But yes, they do that. That's good. About 13% say no. All right. Which advanced rules do you use? Okay, advanced terrain. The biggest thing that we can say about the advanced rules, we don't have an example to go back to, is people are using the advanced missions. So the advanced deployments, that's where a lot of people are getting their use, and the advanced actions as well. Now, I know that in my crew, advanced actions are being played pretty commonly with advanced terrain, where we got about 30% of people just prefer to play the vanilla OPR, which is fine. But yeah, it's really surprising that there is a large portion of the community that is interested in playing the advanced rules. So I think that's great. I mean, we can go through this and see here. I think the big standouts are advanced actions, advanced missions, advanced deployment styles, and advanced terrain. Yeah, command points maybe up there too, and random events. But that's the big leaders. Those are the big reasons that people are playing these things. Have you played in a continuing campaign? Yes, about 22%. No, but be interested. So a lot of people are interested in trying to do a continuing campaign for their games. Okay, yeah, good. If you played, so again, of these 22%, what is it? So okay, this is just the same thing, right? Have not. Basically, 70% of people haven't played, and then it looks like around 3 to 5 people are interested in doing campaign games. Yeah, okay, good. Do you make your own campaigns? A large percent of people make. I'm sorry, it's that thing. I'm sorry, it's this one here. They create their own campaign. They've played an official OPR campaign. Um, that would make sense that with the creative audience of OPR, more people are going to create their own stuff. But, the mission packs, they're there. They don't seem to have this humongous adoption. So there seems to be a sort of this 400 group of people, the people who play the Star Quests and the Quest. There's sort of, I always, like, if I would notate something, there seems to be roughly about 20% of OPR people, I think, probably really care about the lore and the missions. The other 80%, it's not a big deal to them. And I fall in the 80% of people here who, like, I don't really care for the lore that much. But I think that's, maybe 25. It's hard to really, judge it. We would say about 20% of the OPR audience are here for the lore. Like, that's important to them, and they're important about they love the OPR lore, where I think 80% of people, the lore is, like, I haven't read any of the lore books, so I would say I fall into that camp. Which of the recent narrative campaign are you? Now, these are people who are interested in them, and it is the Grimdark Future narrative campaigns that people are interested in. So that's I wish we would have had a not interested in everything here. But yeah, like, in this case, 800 being your max, that's roughly about a third of people, I would say, are invested in the OPR lore at the max, right? And then it sort of tapers off into this, again, this 400-ish realm. Like, we see the same 400 people who are playing the Age of Fantasy Quest. They're interested in the Quest and the Star Quest custom campaigns. Yeah, it's a solid minority, I guess. It's hard to really say, but we can probably roughly put maybe 20% to maybe a third to maybe 33% of people are really invested in OPR lore. What is the most important to you? Okay. What is important to you in a narrative campaign or mission pack? A strong story, about 50%. The biggest thing that people are interested in is they're interested in engaging missions. So I think that's probably the big takeaway here. I think a strong story is decent. A sense of continuing progression. People do want to kind of level up their characters. A unique or interesting campaign mechanics and engaging missions. Yeah. Interesting narrative characters. That same 800 people, right? So the same 800-ish people that want the new OPR missions are interested in OPR characters. And then framing your group inside of a larger narrative. Okay. I mean, again, it seems to be the mechanics and the missions where it's a really strong thing, and like stuff that is sort of devoid of maybe OPR specific lore. All right, which let's get it. Let's do it this way. Okay, which grimdark futures do you play now? So we've seen this big growth in people. Where are they coming from? So big growth. The biggest growth that we see here is about a 300 plus increase in Space Marines. So that makes sense that a lot of people coming into this hobby that are former Games Workshop players or current or play both, they play Space Marines. So that's good to see that we're getting Space Marine players. That's the other side of it is Human Defense Force. Now, Human Defense Force, we're going to see what happens with them because there's always this. There's a general trend that when OPR puts out an army, we see a growth in the number of people that play it, and then that growth slowly tapers out. There is a growth in alien hives, but the percentage dropped from about 40% of players to about 36. I think that's a good thing. Big growth in Battle Brothers. Everything else is sort of modest growth. Blessed Sisters, Custodian Brothers, Dow Union. Like basically all the other smaller armies, they grew in sort of similar increments. I think the Havoc, 336 to 527, that's about a 66% growth. So, and that would make sense. A lot of people, maybe we're getting the Horus Heresy people. So maybe that's a question of here. We'd need to dig into it further. But it, the biggest growths as percentages are in Battle Brothers and Havoc. Havoc growing as a smaller percent. Hino fleets, how are they doing? Decent growth. And yeah, the next big growth point is in Human Defense Force, which are we getting some of the, again, that Heresy does have Solar Auxilia, so are we getting them there too? Interesting. But there's been percentage growth to just about everyone. Infected colonies, jackals have seen growth, machine cults, growth there. Orc Marauders. Orc Marauders had significant growth, basically doubling, but Orc Marauders just came out. So what we see here is that every time they present an army, a lot of people say they play it, and then what happens is those numbers start to go down as, I guess, people are playing the army temporarily. But there was basically a 100% growth in Orc Marauders. We'll see how that continues. Prime Brothers, look at this. One interesting thing is that Prime Brothers didn't grow as a percent much. We may be getting people who don't have the newer GW models. So maybe these are Heresy people, possibly. But still, growth in Prime Brothers, Rat Clans, Rebel Guerrillas, Robot Legions had pretty decent growth, but not like incredible. Sorry and Starhost had some growth, so people are playing they're playing OPR specific armies. Wormhole Demons, not a lot of growth in Wormhole Demons and other. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that we can take away from Grimdark Future is a big growth in Battle Brothers, a big growth in Human Defense Force, and a big growth in Orc Marauders. And I think also a big growth in Havoc Disciples as well. I mean, that's just a big change. Orc Marauders may be because it's just the current army out, but we'll see. All right, let's go to Age of Fantasy armies. I think that's above it. Age of Fantasy. All right. Age of Fantasy, we see modest growths across the board. Vinci, which was always a popular one, had barely any growth. That's probably the first thing that I would note. Duchies of Vinci had very little growth. I think we should note here is that the people coming in to play Age of Fantasy, these new players, they seem to already have established fantasy armies. Now, Dwarves has had a huge growth, and we know, well, they just released their Dwarf army, so that makes sense. We'll see what happens in the future, but that's good. Eternal Wardens, everything is sort of growing. We have a sharp spike in Ghostly Undead. Thank you. And I think we have Harvey to blame for that. Hopefully that won't continue.
Giant tribes, goblins. I'm trying to see if there's anything that jumps out to me. It's just all incremental. I always like to pay attention to Havoc Warriors. High Elves. I mean, everything is growing. Human Empire growing. Yeah. Kingdom of Angels dropped a little bit. The only thing that's dropped, but that's fine. That's not really matter. Mummified undead, ogres, orcs. Yeah, growth. Ratman. I'm always interested. So there's definitely substantial growth in what we would call armies that are from their existing GW armies. Wood elves. Wood elves grew. Remember, they just released theirs. Volcanic dwarves. Vampiric undead grew substantially too. We're just the big story, I think, with Age of Fantasy is we're just seeing people come in from other games, and there's just a general growth with a big growth in dwarves. And I think that's good because the adoption of the dwarf things. With the smallest growth surprise Duchies of Vinci had. So these new players aren't playing Duchies of Vinci. Well, a very small number. But that's the big thing to know about Age of Fantasy. All right, Quest. So they move these questions around, so I need to find them. All right, quests. Where are we at quest here? Quest. Okay. So Age of Fantasy Quest, there looks to just be a general growth, a drop off. No, that's wrong. I'm just seeing growths across the board in Age of Fantasy Quest. I mean, that's good. More people are playing Age of Fantasy Quest. I think that's good. Grimdark Future Armies we already covered. I'm sorry, I'm having to move around because they move these armies. StarQuest? Where's StarQuest at? To find these things. Okay, StarQuest. Does anything jumped out? I don't play these games, so it looks like generalized growth across these, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. War fleets. Let me find war fleets. What's happening with war fleets here? War fleets, more generalized growth. A significant growth in human defense force. I think that would make sense in that maybe people are coming in from other games that have human defense force s ships. So maybe that's good. Robot legions. This is just general growth in war fleets, and I think that's good. I'm looking forward to try. I want to try some more fleets out. I just created some drop fleet commander, so I may want to try war fleets out. All right, I think that's covering everything. I'm just making sure that we didn't forget something here. No. All right. So to sum up things, we had a 800. So we had a big growth in the past 6 months. Maybe it wasn't 50%, but it's growth. And it seems that these new players coming in, they are people who are fully invested into the hobby. There's a lot of them are coming to play casually, but still a strong percent of them are coming to play competitively too. Around 40%. People here who are the two biggest growth places are 40K Warhammer players coming in, and then 3D printers. So the OPR audience seems to be very creative. They seem to be invested in every aspect and seem to be, I would say, mature gamers. So let's see what happens in the next 6 months. Thanks, everyone.